As a person who loves to travel to different places, countries, cities, I have had a lot of experience interacting with people from different cultures and said countries and exposed to different ways of lives. However, none of this would have been possible had it not been for me benefiting from what I call passport privilege, or at least it would have been harder for me to indulge in a hobby of traveling if I didn't have passport privilege. And I don't really see a lot of people who do talk about passport privilege. So I thought it would be an interesting topic to explore. Passport privilege is basically having access to various opportunities that can improve the quality of your life, such as career, cultural enrichment, education, business, and even relationships through your passport and passport ranking. And just before I continue, I do want to say that this video is not to look down on anyone who doesn't have passport privilege based on the definition that I have provided. I know that not everybody has the luxury of being able to travel because traveling, in my opinion, is a hobby that is expensive. Well, it can be expensive. A lot of these privileges are usually not within reach to many people around the world through no fault of their own. So I acknowledge that I am coming from a privileged point of view. So as someone who is of an East African background, who lives in the West, I am what you would call a dual citizen. So this means that I have a citizenship or I have citizenship in the Western country that I have lived in and also in East Africa. So for my East African people who are listening, you will all know about the EAC, which is short for East African Community, that is composed of most of the East African countries and Congo, which is in Central Africa. And we have a singular passport called the EAC passport, which allows us to travel to all the East African community countries, including Congo, visa-free, and explore business and trade opportunities, if I'm not mistaken. I think other regions in Africa have a similar concept too. So for instance, in West Africa, they have something called ECOWAS. And in Southern Africa, they have the SADC, or as some people like to call it, SADC, and it stands for Southern African Development Community. A similar concept exists within the EU, which stands for the European Union, and also we have the Arab League, which consists of the North African countries and also the Arab countries in the Middle East. If you can benefit from the opportunities that these regional communities provide through your passport or any other legal documentation, you need to use it to your advantage as much as you can. If you are back home in Africa, you might be able to move to a neighboring country which has better job opportunities, which means that you'll make a lot more money than where you currently are. Or you might be able to apply for visas but at a much lower price compared to citizens outside of that region that you come from. Usually, a lot of African countries do have connections to other European countries as a result of colonialism. And during colonialism, a lot of the Europeans would gather groups of Africans to study in their respective countries. And over time, this has led to study and work programs that Africans can access to be able to study and work in that European country and potentially start a new life. If you are in the diaspora and have dual citizenship, you basically get the best of both worlds. You have near to an infinite amount of opportunities to improve your life through your passports. You can invest back home in your country as well as building a life for yourself in the West. Granted, you have the means to do so. It's not uncommon for African diasporans or Caribbeans to build houses and have businesses in their respective home countries while working in the West and building a life for themselves in the West. And I think it can be a great thing because the Western world is amazing for resources and opportunities, but deep down, home will always be home for a lot of people, especially if they migrated later on in their life. People will always gravitate to their home country even if they don't end up living there permanently. Another reason why a lot of people do like to invest back home is because the cost of living back home is usually significantly cheaper than it is in the Western country that they live in. So they can get a lot more for their money. However, with all that being said, a lot of issues do start to pop up when too much investment is put into a country, for instance, your home country that you don't currently live in, and you have other responsibilities like taking care of a family. That can lead to you basically being stressed and stressing your finances. And I'm going to make a video about this because it's definitely a topic that needs to be discussed. The regional communities that I mentioned also serve on the social side of things. It does create some sorts of sense of community, although I think it's kind of surface level, but it does create that sense of community amongst the members of that said community in real life. So for instance, I do have quite a few East African friends, and many conversations that I've had with people, African people and other East Africans who I didn't know have started just from the basis of us coming from the same region, just coming from the same region. And I've mentioned this before in a previous video, but one of my favorite initiatives made by East Africans is the flag bracelet. And I think the trend started in Kenya and then the rest of the countries just followed. But I really like that because you can spot an African who wears a flag bracelet. You most likely know that they are from East Africa. Depending on your current geographical location, you probably have an ample amount of countries that you can travel to, which is great for exploring and tasting new foods if you're into that. I just love food. If you live in Europe, you can go on a ski trip to the beach, to a concert in completely different countries in Europe in which you can travel to in under 3 hours at lower prices compared to somebody who is traveling from all the way in the Americas. Same thing applies to Americans. You basically have the Caribbeans and South America right there. You also meet a lot of people through traveling as well who can become your best friends, spouses, acquaintances, mentors, and so on. Also, if you are wanting to start a family or already have children, a lot of passports, especially from what I know in the West and Africa as well, they do grant the children of their passport holders immediate citizenship, which is great for the children as it will help them a lot as they grow up, as they'll be able to reap the benefits of the passport. Passport ranking is also another important subject that falls under passport privilege. So the higher your passport is ranked, the more privilege you have when it comes to travel. The countries that are highly ranked, like top 10, top 5, the passport holders of those countries can pretty much access the whole world visa free, which saves so much money as you don't have to apply or buy visas, which typically can be very tedious and costly of a process. However, I will say that it can be a disadvantage to people who do hold passports that are considered lower rank. This can kind of lead to creating a caste system. I have also noticed that when you do have a highly ranked passport, people do tend to treat you a little bit better, especially in places like the airport or when you're abroad in other countries. I have especially noticed this when traveling with my Western passport. At the airport, sometimes the staff at the passport checkpoint would barely even check my passport and just let me go through. And I've talked to other people who do have Western passports too, and they've also experienced the same thing. Basically, we came to the conclusion that in a lot of cases, all the staff at the airport needed to see is that red or dark blue hardcover or a powerful Middle Eastern or East Asian passport, and they would just let you go through, no question. Whereas people who have passports that are lower ranked sometimes tend to face discrimination, or they have to take extra steps to travel to basically prove themselves that they are worthy to travel to said country. Now, I'm not saying that if you have a higher ranked passport, you are exempt from discrimination, but I would be lying to you if I said it doesn't matter in the slightest. Sometimes the actions of some individuals can affect the power and the reputation of your country's passport. So be careful in how you use your passport privilege and make sure that whatever you do it's legal. Going back to education opportunities that I alluded to in the beginning, you can definitely use your passport privilege to work abroad, whether in a permanent position or temporary, like an internship. This is amazing because you can work for some of the biggest companies in the world, and usually these companies have great benefits, like they pay for your flight, accommodation, and your living expenses whilst you are their employee. So you won't have to think about how you're going to live, and rather, you can spend time accumulating experiences in your chosen industry and network with other professionals. If you work for yourself, you're an entrepreneur, business person, influencer, there are so many business opportunities and events in your field that you can unlock through your passport. I know a big reason why a lot of influencers from other countries can't go to certain influencer trips is because of the restrictions that their passports have. You can also reach a larger audience and market by having connections to other countries too, which means more money and travel opportunities. And by no means am I a professional in passports or a professional who works at an embassy or some sort. But I will say that if you already don't have a passport, please get one. And if you can get one that is higher ranked, go for it. Granted, you have the means to do so, of course. So, what do you think about the concept of having passport privilege? Does it exist? And how else can you use it to your benefit? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.